Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we're going to be taking a look at a whole bunch of zines that have been sitting on my shelf for some time. I have a lot of these. People send them to me all the time, and I usually don't have time to do a full review for each one. So I like to do these bundled reviews so you can see kind of the scope of what's out there in terms of D&D zine material as that becomes a bigger and bigger trend in the world of RPG publishing. We're going to be looking at Flick Silverpen's Guide to Dragontown. We'll be looking at this, which is, I forget what it's called. There it is, A Hamsterish Horde of Hexes. This is another little spell book from Lost Pages. We have Lowlife. This is a dungeon crawling, cave crawling zine, a little bit like Veins of the Earth, but in a more compact format. We have the Forest Primordia, which is a little hex crawl for Troika-like games. And the Nightland. This is by Vasily Kalaman. I've done a review of his stuff before. I believe Xanadu was the previous dungeon that I looked at. And this is another hex crawl, or more of a location crawl or a point crawl in a land of darkness. Before we start digging into all of this stuff, though, a quick shout out to today's sponsor. From the creators of the science fantasy RPG Hypertellurians comes Capes and Cloaks and Cowls and a Park, a self-contained, system-neutral sandbox setting in a Vanished Wizards ultra-dimensional theme park filled with sorcerous fashion designers. Lavishly illustrated and mapped, brimming with fashion-forward treasures and rides. This 112-page hardcover book features 6 themed islands packed with adventure sites, over 30 characters and creatures, magical garments, 100 extraordinary treasures, and so much more. Check it out on Kickstarter using the link below. All right, first of all, let's look at Flick Silverpen's Guide to Dragontown. As usual, links to where you can get all of these books will be in the description below. They may still be available in print, possibly just in PDF, but I'll put whatever links I can find down there. All right, this comes with a couple of handouts to start off with. I love zines that come with handouts, so that's fun. We have a map of the valley, and this whole book was written by the guy who also illustrated it. I really love it when you have author-illustrator combos like that because you know that the feel and the look of the product is all coming from one mind, so it has a very coherent look. We have Dragontown on the back of it. This is the town that you're going to be exploring. It is a little town. We have a castle over there. There is a dragon there who's the mayor of the town, and he has gone missing. No one's seen him for a while. And all sorts of other problems are cropping up in the town that you can investigate and try to solve. The other handout is Flick Silverpen's Guide to the Windsong Woods, which I guess is a little forest, perhaps nearby to Dragontown. Some information on how to navigate them, the corruption that's there, the different regions, and the encounter tables for each region within the forest. So you might ask, where is this forest? Well, this is a pocket mod, which means it is a little booklet that is folded up, and you can unfold it, and it turns into a map. It's very cool. So you can have a little hex crawl in this forest as an interlude, perhaps, while you're exploring Dragontown, or just as a separate adventure, maybe. The trouble I always have is folding these back up again. There we go. The Windsong Woods. All right, what do we get inside Dragontown? We have the map of the town again. Using this guide, it is system neutral, though of course it does assume a D&D-like system. The stat blocks are D&D-ish. They have hit dice, hit points, all of that stuff. I believe it was play-tested using my game Knave, so Knave would work well for it, as well as Old School Essentials or anything like that. Some adventure hooks, a little bit of history of Dragontown. There's lots of characters in this. We have all the different friendly faces here. I love that there are page references. So they all have great names like Zora, Duhar, Yardley, Burger, Odal, Surlish, things like that. There's our little dragon. Magic apples are a big thing here. There's lots of magical apple orchards that all do different things. I love how they have colors, tastes, what their rarity is, the magical effect they have. I'm sure players are going to wander around collecting all of these and figuring out ways to use them. Because there's a lot of fun problem solving, like growing and shrinking. Water can't touch you. You can hear plants speaking. Smart players are going to find all sorts of fun ways to use this. All the different apple farms are listed. Very cartoony, kind of childish illustrations, but I think it looks really good. It definitely has, you can tell that there's a feel, there's a look that the creator is going for that I think they achieve quite well. This would probably be a great adventure that you could run with kids. Market that you can go to, the Placid Gate. It's a stable. The Ashwell Smithy. I love how each of these have their own typeface at the top. The Valorum Temple, Tidbit Bakery, the Ugly Mug. Great stuff. Slimes in the streets. As the sun sets each night, a trail of 10 to 20 medium-sized green slimes emerge from behind the castle walls and disperse through Dragontown. We have a cidery. Grandpa's farm. Here's what our stat blocks look like. They have a save high and a save low. So basically, if there is an effect that you think the monster could save from, then you would decide, is the monster good at saving? Then you would use that one. If they are bad at saving to that effect, you would use that one. This is basically the system that is used in the Neverland role-playing game. So it's neat to see that little innovation being used. The Alley Cats. A little group of burglars that you can join with to try and break into the castle. Little dungeon, their hideout. I suppose you could also try and rob them or explore their hideout if you weren't on their team. The Fizzle Flock Apiary, where you have all of your bees. You can buy some honey. Go into the cemetery, explore down to the crypt, and then get into the castle that way. There's more than one way you can get in. Love to see that. You want to encourage player creativity and exploration. Rundown of our different rooms here. I love this. Isometric views of the castle itself. That is great. Just because when you look at an isometric view like this, it's very easy to get a clear sense of what the room looks like, how big it is. It saves a lot of time in reading the description because a lot of it can be done from the picture itself. I love how it's surrounded by a moat of thorns. It's very fairy tale-like. A sludge behemoth. Library. Naranar Tirnimloth, a druid of the Windsong Woods, has been putting the dragon to sleep because of reasons. You can talk to him and try and talk him out of it. If you try and fight the dragon, well, you'll have to fight a dragon. I don't think the dragon actually has stats, which probably tells you that you're not supposed to fight him. If you have a small group fighting a gold dragon, you'd probably just mush them. Or I guess you could use gold dragon stats from your RPG of choice. Inspiration, Neverland, of course. Servants of the Cinder Queen, that's from Jason Lutz, who did Freebooters on the Frontier. I really do like that that system. I've used that way back in the day. Skull Fungus, Nate Treem, and Knave. Oh, that's nice of him. And we have the map of the valley in the back. There we go. Fun little stopover on your journeys. You can drop this into a hex, I suppose, anywhere on your hex map, and have some adventures in Dragontown, try and solve some mysteries, collect some apples, stuff like that. What else we got here? Let's look at Nightland by Vasily Kalaman. There we have our map. This is a point crawl. So this is a weird landscape of kind of eternal night, and all these different locations connect to each other. They all have their own write-ups. It'd be nice if these were numbered or named. That would help a little bit. And I think this wraps around from one side to the other, if I'm not mistaken. So it's almost like a little planet. It's for an OSR system. Character levels 2 to 3. And it's inspired by a number of different, very old... Let's see if we can find it here. I'm sure I'll come across it later. But a lot of like old pulp magazines and old weird fiction from back in the day. And as a point crawl, you got to think about illumination. The ambiance is melancholia, world weariness, wounded innocence, reflection, entropy, exhaustion, romanticism, idealism, and hope. What this reminds me a lot of is a early weird fiction book called The Nightland that was very similar to this. I'm not sure if this drew direct inspiration from that or not, though. Some factions here, the Sun Mourners. I love all of the art. The art is done by Andrew Walter. I know I've seen his stuff before, probably in Troika, I would guess. It looks very Troika-ish. It's very surreal, but it's very evocative. I love his art. Sun Mourners, what are some of their abilities? They summon a small creature made of ash. They knows of each of the sorrows you have ever lived through. They compel a dead creature into a jerking motion to appear alive. They roam the Nightland in ceaseless quest of remaining embers of the extinguished sun. Good times. The Necro Divas. They're in relentless search of adulation. Each is served by a love-struck entourage convinced she alone can replace the sun in the hearts of the people of the Nightland. The Void Engineers, they're hierarchical, clandestine, greedy. I love how we have these little tags here. It helps you get a good sense of them really quickly. More an ideology than a faction. They're convinced the sun can be restored and are committed to the task. Random events and encounters. Let's see if there's any interesting ones here. Maybe a conflict. Roll 3 times and combine. Very nice. So you could have a Void Engineer guarding a winged beheader. So there's lots of different possible combinations here. So you're going to be getting a lot of new stuff anytime you roll one. It's going to be unlikely that you'll have the exact same thing more than once, which is nice. These looks like the beginning of the descriptions of each location. Entrance to the Nightland. Well, again, this would be nice if this was numbered because it's right in the front, but it's less useful because you have to go to somewhere else to actually get... Is it near the back? I know I saw it before. There we go. It's right in the middle of the book. Well, the middle is still okay because it's pretty easy to turn to. But put that stuff in the front too. Why not? Entrance to the Nightland is right over there. And it has a path to location 2. It's a little bit like a choose-your-own adventure novel in that it tells you where you can go from each place. A 30-foot diameter pit interrupts the path. Flashes of radiant color sparkle within. You got to have a party that really likes the surrealism of this kind of fiction. Commune inhabited by a major faction. With people that are there, lots of different great names and descriptions. Perhaps it's Annabelle, sworn to their life to the defense of the faction. Sleepless, stimulant addict, carries their favorite item. Former maker of religious symbols. Chatterbox, probing. Great stuff. Merchant caravan. Extraordinary phenomena in the heavens. The vanishing hypercube, the unearthed tomb. The Necrodivas, a ladder made of hair reaching to another plane. Well, that's plenty weird. The Lake of Redemption, a body of water used for baptisms and funerals. A structure built by Void Engineers. The Temple of the Eternal Flame. Perhaps you are approached by, roll 2 times and combine. You're approached by Jakob, funeral beggar, unstable, terrified, has a heart of gold. With a hook, over-explains everything twice, carries the burden of great personal loss. All right. The Children of Rain. Got our map. The Fog, a valley where beings emerge or disappear. The Crater of Eternal Recurrence, a scar in the landscape caused by a failed sun. Around the crater's edge, ash golems, Melzar, a maelstrom tactician. Some tea gardens. The Pit of Raskolnikov. Raskolnikov? I feel like that's a reference to something. Oh yeah, that's Crime and Punishment, right? I'm not mixing up my Russian novels. Some rumors, plenty of rumors here. For example, the dead must be cremated or buried immediately. Beware of being seduced by cults. Nightland is the place of the afterlife. Those who find themselves here are stuck for eternity. Class names. Oh, this is cool. Class name table. They're called roll 2 times and combine. First name, Caustic Inquisitor, or a Flame Architect, or a Soul Centurion. Oh, those are fun. Residents here, and a whole bunch of weird loot. Are these magic items? A little bit. They're more like oddities. A metal sphere that floats like a balloon. A small leather-bound book filled with prophecies. Some sunstones, song spells. Ashen Replicant, accurate duplicate of a caster formed of solid ash. Hit points distributed equally with shared abilities. Expires after spell duration has elapsed. Not too much information about them. I guess you'd have to kind of flesh that out yourself. The increase in power level in line with the caster's level. So they're level-less spells. Yeah, you do have to customize those. Bestiary, an Ash Golem. Faceless Drifter. Shadow Walker. Oh, these are nice and weird. Sun Sprites, Quantum Blinkers, the Winged Beheader. Twilight Vermin. What's this down here? Relationship Matrix. So this helps you figure out the relationships between different factions. So Ash Golems and Faceless Drifters. The Golems always try to ambush Drifters. Or maybe Sun Sprites and Necrodivas. Sprites abhor the Divas. So if you're rolling random encounters and you get different factions together, you know how they're going to react. That's neat. Open gaming license. I guess this is mostly designed for old school essentials. Yeah, for old school essentials. Very cool. Lots of flavor. A lot of great imagination in that one. What are we going to look at next? How about the Forest Primordia? It has that font that a lot of Troika books seem to use. I think the original Troika used it. Written by J.A. Kordosh, along with illustrations by him, Erich Tolbert, and Dave B. Norton. Music of the Spheres, customized adventure playlist. Oh, use a playlist. Nothing happened. I think you have to use the PDF for this to work. Main story. Shipwrecked adventurers search for a source of energy to power their way off a lost, nameless sphere. So, if I remember my Troika correctly, the idea is that it's a little bit like Planescape in that you have all of these spheres, which are like planes of existence or like pocket universes. And the assumption is that you're traveling between them. And Troika is kind of this central city at the center of the universe. So this assumes that you're on some sort of voyage and you're going to crash somewhere and figure out a way to get off. Supporting stories, we have a scheming devotee of chaos, gleefully willing to sacrifice anything to resurrect a long-forgotten god, a village of dreamers and artisans living off the literal fat of that god's soulless shell of a body. Gross. A cohort of mechanical knights whose faith has been eroded by their tedious, millennia-long vigil. And Dr. Arctura Volgo, an intrepid traveler determined to experience the wildest aspects of the Omniverse. Make a character, you're on a barge, crash in a village, explore a forest, get to the ziggurat, and then things can happen afterwards. Wow, that is some big font. Roll 2d6. Interesting. So in the original Troika, you're rolling 3d6. You're rolling 2d6, and that creates 36 possible options. But those are all equally likely. If you're rolling 2d6 and adding them together, then you're creating a bell curve, right? So things at the low end, like this, is going to be rolling a 2 is going to be very unlikely. So you're not going to be getting omniversal guardians very often, whereas you'll be getting, 6, 7s, and 8s very frequently. Mindseed Revelator, Soul-Broken Gun Savior. They all have great names for classes. Let's see what this one is. Once you had a calling, a deity to worship, a community to serve, a mission to uphold. Tragedy struck and everything was shattered. You can no longer remember who or what you venerated. A god of lightning? Of wine? It seems absurd, yet the pain of loss still stings. The emptiness remains. Your new faith rests in the metal between your palms, and your prayers sent with each pull of the trigger. That's good. You got a fusel, I guess that's a gun. Some plasmic cores. Shrouded symbol of worship. So you're sort of like an ex-cleric that's now like a gunslinger. Nice. Blank book, adamantine mask, steel bludgeon, and you got fusel fighting, healing, bludgeon fighting, knife fighting, locks. All right. Amnesiac aristocrat, a dream scar knight, ex-pleasure barge host captain. You start out on a pleasure barge. I skimmed through this a little bit beforehand. And so that's funny that a lot of players could also be ex-pleasure barge host captains. Just a whole bunch of ex-captains hanging out on someone else's pleasure barge is, I think, a funny idea. So 12, living lab. Again, this would be a very unusual class to roll. Some new spells, like rewind, lock arms with a being and return to exactly 1 minute ago. Only you two have free will for the next minute, and only you know time rewound. Some weird items. Prologue. Roll a d6 to see what they were up to before they hopped onto the Emerald Vault. That's going to be your barge. Perhaps you failed heist. You barely escaped the Mech Imperator's wrath after trying to pilfer some of their precious metals and immaculate jewels. Now their chroma hunters seek you across the spheres. At the start of the adventure, read the following to the players. Oh, 3 pages of boxed text. That is no good. I mean, I'm not going to go hunt you down if you use it, but it'd be nicer if you just had some good descriptions that you could riff off of. Don't get too comfortable. You're on the barge. Things go badly. Crashes, looks like. The captain disappears. And you're on this little hex map. So this is the beach down here where you crashed, And then over this forest, you can see this ziggurat. So that becomes your objective, is to get there. What happens if you wander off in this direction is not totally clear. Maybe the forest just gets too thick or something like that. So it's not super linear. It could be worse. There's definitely different directions you can go within here, but it is fairly constrained as far as a D&D-like adventure goes, or an OSR adventure goes. The village that eats its god every night. That sounds fun. Village randomizer. You got a pig folk sculptor who is very frank. Or some village encounters. Bird folk elders play the lute and sing songs of adventures and rest. They're eating this dead god for all their food. So you've gotten some god meat. Test luck when eating a slice of god meat. Anyone who fails will immediately vomit and fall unconscious. Roll to determine their dream. Even those who have a successful luck roll for dream when they sleep next. 3 successful luck tests creates an immunity to both nausea and dreams. The Forest Primordia itself, we got some monsters here with Troika stats. So their skill, like how good they are at stuff. I think you use that for fighting. It's been a while since I've read Troika, gotta be honest. Stamina is like your health. I did play some fighting fantasy. I played one of those original books, The City of Thieves, with my kid. And that was pretty fun. So these look familiar. Luck, initiative, armor. Okay. I love how in Troika, each monster has its own little reaction table. There's not like a universal one. So everyone has like a unique feel to it when you encounter it. Electric ghosts, slug spawn. So here's our forest. You have your 3 main types of hexes. Bog mire are these 3 ones, and I guess that one up there. The ghost ways are over here, and then you have some circle woods over here. And they all have their own table. Perhaps something like the scent of lavender lingers in the air, or a drunken tree moot. Roll mine for moot vibes. The challenge of the ghost monk. You fight a monk, that's fun. A drunken tree. Deconstructed ziggurat. We have room numbers, but no map. Oh, there's the map. Probably should put that at the beginning. Swirling around the ziggurat are dozens of free-floating chambers not found on the map. Use these tables to generate random rooms and establish atmosphere. Okay, so you can continue to expand it if you want to. Some of the rooms include things like a barracks, an engraved gallery. Carved upon the walls is a scene of the powers of law binding Zargastos. They are etched to appear bold and purposeful, wise and just. Volgo's pipe and D3+4 soul blooms lie in the corner. Misshapen Knight. Ooh, an actual Chaos Lord. Yeah, this is giving me a lot of vibes of the Eternal Champion. Some of that Michael Moorcock. You have your Chaos Lords and your Law Lords, right? These eternal forces that are... So law and chaos being that spectrum that everyone is on, with good and evil not really being a thing. I like that spectrum a little bit better. Some background on this particular chaos god. I think he's the one that's being eaten. He's probably not happy about that. At least that would be my guess. When his soul reunites with his body, he truly awakens. His reactions vary depending on the person and circumstances. So I guess he can wake up and start going on this path of destruction through the forest, eating everything in his path. A colossal triumphant Zargastos makes his fairy battalion to sail the mirror wind skies. The gargantuan god will seek his vengeance against the powers of law and chaos alike. I love an adventure that can go completely off the rails and just alter the course of the cosmos. Some possible endings and some next adventure hooks. Maybe stories of the spheres. You're in a tavern telling stories again. Then a wizard duel breaks out. One mage's face is a glowing mask, and the others, why they're wearing player character's face. Cool. It'd be nice to have lots of zines like this, just because that whole premise in Troika, visiting different spheres, is a fun idea. But having a little zine, like one for each sphere, would be really ideal, right? Because that way you could just get on a barge and travel the spheres and like roll a die and then just flip through a random box of zines, pull one out, and just say you land here. I like that idea. Low Life. This is a really nice looking zine. It has kind of, it's fake worn D100 caver trinkets on the back. There's a little handout here. Everyone loves their handouts. I think this is a sample dungeon or a sample cave to explore. So you have the basement itself, the sub-basement, the shallow mines, the caverns, and then the deep mines. Sorry, the deep mines and the caverns. I guess it goes around like that. Kind of a loop. Beneath the Harlow House. So what's the premise of this? Outside town, on the banks of the lakes, is the old Harlow House. Back in the day, they ran a rich mining company, but nobody's seen Lady Harlow in decades. Before she vanished, there were accusations of profane rituals and black magic, but no one could prove anything. Now rumors swirl that the lady still dwells somewhere beneath the house, and more critically, that she still holds a fortune in silver. Of course she does. The design of having this sort of dark, greenish brown background with this kind of light white creamy color, I'm not sure if that was the best idea. The legibility isn't too bad. But it is just a little bit hard to read. Maybe some more contrast would be good. Let's see what we get in Low Life. Caving equipment. Every single inch of this zine is being used for something useful. All your different equipment here. Got your table of contents. Designed by Sam Sorensen. Illustrated by Søren Jasinski. And edited by Jarrett Crater. Some good design in terms of keeping things on one page or two-page spreads. So caving, you have your passage sizes, whether it's a crawl, a squeeze, or a choke. This stuff makes me incredibly claustrophobic in a good sort of way. It's just horrifying to me thinking about crawling underground in like caves that are too small to fit through. So this really works for that horror aspect. The pace that you're caving, creep, half, full, and double. So creep is traveling extremely slowly. Half your normal travel speed. Full speed is normal dungeon travel speed, whatever that is. And double moving at full tilt, equivalent of a dead sprint. Yeah, when I was reading this, I'm not totally sure what exactly these speeds mean. What does it mean by normal dungeon travel speed? Because typically in OSR-like games, a dungeon travel speed is 120 feet every 10 minutes or so, if I remember correctly. And that is really slow, right? That is like 12 feet every minute. So you're like inching along at normal dungeon speeds. And going twice as fast as that would not be a sprint at all. So I'm not sure what speeds these actually correspond to. I feel like a normal dungeon crawl speed is very close to a creep, really. Caving roll. So you get your pace, you look at the size of it, and you can roll a d6 to figure out what the result is if something bad happens. And there's lots of different things that can happen. So for example, if you fail on a crawl, a squeeze, or a choke, you have different things that could happen depending on if you fail a check on your different attributes. You can do all of these in order. So if let's say that you're going down a crawl and you're going at full speed, it's a 3 in 6 chance of success. So if you fail, you can say, okay, so I was going down a crawl. First, I make a con check. If I succeeded a con check, then I only suffer the effects of the next failure that I roll. But if I roll a failure on the con check, then I will suffer the effects of all of the different failed checks that I make in each of these attributes. It's a little bit complicated, but I think it's pretty intuitive in practice. Things that could happen is your limbs cramp up or you smack your head against something hard. But over here, if you're in a choke, things could get worse and worse, right? 'Cause that's a much more dangerous situation. So you're stuck and you can't move anything at all. Say versus crushing force would be paralyzed in place. Or stuck and you start screaming. NPCs make a morale check. Monsters will be drawn to you. When you're stuck, how to get unstuck. I love how you can't make checks to get unstuck. If you're truly stuck, then your ability scores don't help you. You have to think of something else and probably get help from people. Caving examples. Nice. Climbing, slope, wall, overhang, ceiling. A lot of the stuff reminds me of things in Veins of the Earth, which is the classic masterpiece of Underdark Travel by Patrick Stewart. You should check that out if you haven't seen that. I did review it a while back. Climbing rolls, when you're going the different angles, things get more and more dangerous. And you can, again, make the same thing. You can fail a climbing roll, and the worst things are the more dangerous the situation is, like if you're trying to climb on the ceiling, then you could like fall and flail desperately. Everyone under you must save versus grabbing your grabbing hands or fall as well. Or you can break limbs, snap a rib, things like that. Falling into water. Climbing example. I love how there's these detailed play examples of how this stuff works. That is super helpful. How to tunnel. Depending on the kind of earth that you're tunneling through, how fast you're going to move. What happens if you fail tunneling rolls. Little subsystems for everything. Tunneling straight up. Tunneling with dynamite. Generating tunnels. So this is a different system than Veins of the Earth. You're just rolling a bunch of D6s. It's a die drop system, but it doesn't work quite the same way. And you're creating connections between all the closest ones. And then dice that add up to 7 create additional connections. And then you can try and figure out tunnel sizes by adding the 2 nodes together. And that tells you what kind of tunnel size. And it just generates itself as you keep following that procedure. You can create a dungeon and then number all the different rooms, then use a strategy to connect them with secret tunnels to crawl through. And some information on how to do things vertically. Because, caving is a 3-dimensional activity. So you're going to probably have multiple levels of these tunnels, and then certain nodes are going to be connecting downwards. Not straight downwards, of course. They're going to twist and turn. They're not going to line up perfectly, right? It's going to make it very easy for players to get lost, which is quite realistic. Tunnel warfare. Some rare items to find, like drain pipe pills, a tin of dozen white pills that slow the gutter lung, taken once each morning to prevent the loss of any constitution as a result of gutter lung. Some new spells. Axe soup. The magician touches a bowl, pot, or basin of water. If they get an axe or any other tool or weapon, soak in the water. If they let an axe soak in the water for an hour, they can be eaten like meat. Ha! That's a good spell. I like it. What's that kid's book? Stone Soup? That's what it reminds me of. Some hazards. Cave-ins, stink damps, trench foot, cave smog, gutter lung. I guess that's like the black lung that you can contract from staying underground for too long. Some weird flora, some weird fungi. Solar morels, shiny yellow morels, all spongy and fleshy. Aroma of fresh grass, bitter flavor. And some monsters. Coal elementals, ghost canaries. Harvest cherubim, that's creepy sounding. A huge centipede, 3 feet wide and 24 feet long with a human child's face. Yeah, that's pretty creepy, all right. They possess all the human's cunning and guile with the predatory assets of a centipede. A precognitive mole, undertaker. Great names for monsters here. A tunnel rat player class, tunnel rat gear, and some tattoos and trinkets. This reminds me a lot of Mothership. I love how that idea is bleeding into other genres. The genre of this book actually feels more like, 1800s or something like that, rather than strictly medieval D&D. But of course, it's easily adaptable. And I love how just picking a few tattoos and trinkets can tell you what your character is like without having to roll for personality and things like that. So your tattoo could be Fiat Lux plus a candle. And then your trinket might be a fine buckskin jacket or 6 Roman candles. And let's see, what do we got? Our last zine we're going to take a look at is this one, The Hamsterish Horde of Hexes. It's by E.A. Bisson. Development by Paolo Greco. So this book is split into 2 parts. The first part is organized around grimoires, 8 different grimoires covering 8 different topics. That's neat. I like how they have particular names. And so you can pick one up and perhaps get all the spells inside it. Each grimoire contains a whole magic discipline made of 8 spells without levels, table of paraphernalia, 6 petty items helpful to the practitioners of that discipline, appropriate for both the drawers of great wizards and as random starting items for apprentices, and some esoterica, secret knowledge, hermetic lore. The second part of the book, a catalog of enchanted items, starts on page 36. And then he has some of their levelless spell rules at the back, probably similar to the ones that we saw originally in Wonder and Wickedness. So, for example, our first spell book or grimoire is the Principia Primordia. The hand that created the Principia was an artistic one, presenting their work in vibrant dyes of cobalt blue and peacock green on a pair of scrolls of fine snow-white silk. That's nice. I love having actual descriptions of what the spell book looks like. This makes it a really powerful magic item to hand out to wizards. Now, what are the principles? So this is all about energy, I would guess. Blast Sphere, Desert Spite, Elemental Blade, Hoarfrost, Ignition. Bolt of Brilliant Lightning that races towards the chosen target, 1d6 damage, Shattering Metal. Silver Sickles. They act as a dagger, Storm of Doves. So these are all looks like evocation spells. It's a little disappointing that most of them just seem to be damage spells in one way or another. One of the things that I like most about these spell books from Lost Pages is that there's very few, if any, damage spells or stat spells. They mostly do weird stuff. If I remember right, the original Wonder and Wickedness has rules so that any spell that you've memorized can be turned into a damage spell by just like unleashing the energy from your brain as a way to just ignore damage spells entirely and focus on other stuff. Those do tend to be my favorite. Some paraphernalia like a leather pouch containing 8 glittering flash baubles, all spiky metallic points and warm to the touch, wrapped in waxen linen. A flash bauble explodes for 1d6 damage of a random elemental type when tossed against something. Let's look at a couple of more of these. The Least Book of Serpentarius. Astromachia. Blade of the Stars, Concordance of Heaven. So these are all like space themed, looks like. So this one, The Gate to the Moon. Spell opens a disc-shaped 5-foot diameter portal ringed in silvery luminescent crystal. Transfers anything passing through to a single location of the caster's choice within a mile. All right, it's a teleport spell. Vox Astra. Calls upon the favorable stellar harmonies to affect the fortune of a single creature. Gives a +1 to all rolls for the duration of the spell. This one creates a single star ghost, a tiny silvery sphere that trails pale multicolored flames, which flies unerringly towards a target designated by the caster, does 1d6 damage. Again, a lot of just like damage spells or like stat affecting spells. A lot of these at paraphernalia look like they're a lot of fun though. Path of the Briar. So this is all roses, thorns, life seeds. That's our theme for that one. Collected Wisdoms, Sage Discipline. The Cloak of Silver, The Quelling Touch, Reading Life's Threads. Casting this spell cloaks the caster in a protective sheath of magical force. Takes on any form, a pearly mist, orbiting plates of milky crystal, a barely perceptible green glow, and will absorb 1d6 hit points of elemental damage. Again, we're just absorbing hit points of damage here. Dowsing. That looks fun. Burning Prism Path. Flame's Bounty. Pick one at random here. Shroud of the Blaze. Casting this spell creates 2 airborne flames that circle around the caster. Any opponent attacking the caster is immediately struck by the flames, receiving 2 damage. All right. Exsanguinis. I'm guessing this is all like blood related. This one allows the caster to place undetected a single command within the psyche of the target to be acted upon at a later time. All right. Look like a geese. Let's see what some of the stuff near the back is like. Some magic items. So the automata, some brews and potions, the Cobra King's warding. Sometimes this emerald green draught is found in an ordinary potion vial, but is most commonly stored in small flasks of amber glass, stoppered and sealed with wax. For the next hour, the imbiber sports thin, flexible scales of greenish gold, granting a magical +4 bonus to defense. Heaven's Glass. This one looks interesting. Slab of obsidian an inch thick. Roughly shaped around its circumference. The one broadside is simply stone pecked to a slightly convex pitted surface. The other has been polished to such a high degree, the surface is unblemished as still water. Concentrating on it will produce a specific effect once a day, depending on the nature of the individual holding the disc. Those without connection to a greater power principle may receive a single clerical spell of 3rd level or lower as they wish. You can ask questions and get answers. Neat, so you can actually ask questions of the stars. That's very flavorful. I like stuff like that. Some magic rings, some weapons. Ephemera, some scrolls, potions, and charms, like the Voiceless Bell. A jade bell with no clapper. It creates magic silence for 2 rounds. Nice. I like how it inverts what you think a bell would do. Time's Arrow, multicolored dart that grants a single extra action. Sun's Essence, irregular amber shape that casts warmth like a small campfire for 1d4 hours. And some rules for spells without levels. There we go. A little book of spells. If you want to actually have wizards pick up new spell books, this could be a fun option, I think, just because the descriptions of the spell books are so elaborate and detailed. They'll feel like they've got a really cool magic item. Though it is, like I said, more stat focused than some of Lost Page's other books, at least as far as I can tell. That won't necessarily bother other players. So these are all the books we've looked at today. Lowlife, The Hamster's Hoard of Hexes, The Forest Primordia, Nightland, and Dragon Town. Thanks for hanging out with me and looking at these. As usual, links will be down in the description below. Thanks for watching, and thanks to all my patrons for supporting and recommending that I do this review today. And thanks for watching. See you guys next time.